This sunken container became big news after local researchers discovered the weird metallic object on the bottom of the ocean. On the surface, it looked like a standard shipping container, but inside it held a massive secret. So when their diving robot dug it up and the heavy-duty door swung open, everyone turned pale instantly. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The buoy that detected the most tremors was about 20 miles from shore. When Izzy and her team arrived at the scene, they got straight to work. Izzy was also the main researcher, so it was customary for her to dive down first. There was a massive shipping container present at the bottom of the ocean, and it was obvious that Izzy could not lift the metal object out of the water with her bare hands. When Izzy resurfaced, she quickly ordered the ship's diving robot to take over. "Let's get it onto our boat," she demanded. Luckily, they didn't just leave their research facility with just any vessel. No, their ship had high-end equipment, which Izzy was qualified to use. So with Izzy's orders in place, her colleagues prepared the drone to delve down deep. Their ship's crane was capable of lifting massive objects, but somehow this simple shipping container made their machine work extremely hard for it. The entire boat rocked back and forth and even took on some water while lifting the metal box out of the water. With much effort and a few nervous faces, they eventually managed to lift the mysterious container out of the water. With a loud bang, it landed on the deck of their ship, and the entire crew immediately rushed in to inspect the exciting find. A shipping container wasn't usually watertight, so when lifted off the ocean floor, one might expect water to leak out of every hole, but somehow that wasn't the case here. Everybody awaited Izzy's command. After a few deep breaths, she decided that it was time to open her up, but do it slowly, she stated. With a large bolt cutter, the main lock on the container was cut off, and afterward, the door's handles were pulled aside. And when the door was finally fully opened, everyone watching turned pale instantly. Nobody could have expected them to make this bizarre discovery. And the one who shocked me the most was Izzy herself. She was transfixed by what she saw inside this metallic vessel. Nobody said anything at first. They had discussed the container's possible contents, but nobody expected this. Izzy was the first to break the silence. "What is this? Did someone live here?" Her voice was drenched in disbelief because the contents were weirdly homely, but her colleagues didn't have an answer. The inside of the container was fully furnished, but there was a bed, couch, closet, and table with chairs. It had had everything any regular household had. Izzy was surprised not only by the fact that the container was fully furnished, but also by the fact that everything was still somewhat in place. They quickly discovered that everything was nailed to the floor. They searched every inch of the container but didn't find anything that got them closer to the truth. Izzy let out a frustrated sigh and was about to give up when one of Izzy's colleagues suddenly let out an excited yell. When she turned around, she could see him holding up a plastic Ziploc bag, but what sparked his excitement was what was inside it, some sort of recorder. Izzy handled the bag cautiously, anxious any wrong movement might cause it to break or ruin any recording inside. The bag was stowed away very neatly, and when she opened it, Izzy immediately noticed that the device was still dry. This was a good indication, and she pressed play with good faith. It was hard to understand the recording out in the middle of the ocean, so the group quickly moved inside. At first, it was mostly background noise, but then the voice sounded clear. "I need to record this before they notice we are here and capture us," it responded to someone in the background. The voice sounded panicked, making the first spoken sentence in the recording very ominous. There was a short silence, and then the man cleared his throat and introduced himself as Ahamechan. "I hope someone will find the container in this recording and is able to help. Lives are at stake," he hurriedly spoke. Morris denied. The recording suddenly fell silent. Izzy looked at her colleagues, who all shared the same look, a look of pure disbelief and confusion. What had they gotten themselves into? What was going on? The message sounded disturbing, and they wanted to help this person, but how? Then, the recording suddenly continued. Izzy moved closer to hear what the voice said. "We are in desperate need of assistance. We are on the Evercargo Voyager, but I don't know for how long." Then, the recorder stopped again. Izzy tried to get it to work again, but her efforts were futile. It was broken. The room fell silent. They were all speechless. Then, Izzy remembered something. The ship had been sighted multiple times but only seemed to dock for a short while each time. It only refueled and moved minimal cargo, even though it was filled with containers. Izzy frowned and sighed. Why would a ship with shipping containers dock so few times and not load its containers? This odd behavior greatly confused Izzy and raised some red flags. Izzy reviewed the log database again, hoping to find more information about the vessel. She exclaimed when she noticed its last seen location. "It's closed." Izzy ensured everyone aboard was on the same page and was happy to see everyone share her concern about the situation. She gave the captain the coordinates of the ship's last known location. Once they arrived, they were surprised to see the vessel floating 20 km from the coast. It was just lying there. What? Even though Izzy and her colleagues were curious to find out what was happening, they were also anxious to get close. They needed help. "I will signal the Coast Guard and police," Izzy said resolutely. So Izzy ensured that when the Coast Guard arrived with the police, they were out of the cargo ship's line of sight. Once the officers were aboard, she quickly explained the situation and told them what they had heard on the recording. She was relieved that the police believed her and took it very seriously. But there was one major problem. Given the reports about the ships, it was safe to assume they docked shortly to keep people from seeing what they were up to. If they saw the officers approaching, they would surely not let them aboard. They needed a plan, and luckily, Izzy thought of something. The police officers could lend some of the research crew's clothing and approach the ship in disguise. They were less likely to turn away a group of scientists. You can say we're investigating fish migration in the area and that their ship is in prime position to do some readings, Izzy said. Izzy felt her heart pound against her chest as she and two police officers approached the container ship. The trio used a small dinghy stored on the back of the research vessel to cross the distance. When they got close, Izzy requested entry on the ship, and they immediately realized things were off. The captain didn't immediately invite them on. Izzy had to make some real effort to convince the man she and the officers were scientists. Meanwhile, the captain gave orders to his workers and there was a lot of activity on the ship. They had been waiting for half an hour when they got their response. The workers on the ship let down a ladder so the trio could climb aboard. "You have 1 hour," he said, after which he ordered everyone back to work. Izzy smiled and tried her best to act like she was making recordings. Izzy and the officers walked over the ship, trying to discover what was going on while acting as inconspicuously as possible. But there was nothing that indicated anything was wrong. They probably used the last half hour to conceal any evidence. Getchin, out of desperation, Izzy started to whisper the man's name. "Ahmed Osman, are you here?" she repeated a few times as the trio walked between multiple containers. Then, suddenly one of the containers beside them opened up and they were pulled inside, after which the door closed again. The trio was surprised to see that the container was filled with people. But the container wasn't only filled with people. This one was furnished like the container they had pulled out of the ocean. "Who are you?" a man demanded. Izzy stationed recognized him from the pictures and the recording. She stepped forward and explained who they were and that they found his recording. But Ahmed explained that he and all the others were looking for passage to a safe country. He heard rumors about a ship taking people aboard and doing just that. But once he was on board, things changed. "In return for the journey, I had to work on the ship for 1 year. But they kept extending that period, never letting me get ashore," Ahmed explained. "I've been here for 2 years, but some of these people have lived here much longer. Everyone lived inside containers like this, and the captain and crew exploited them. The conditions were horrible, and the endless labor caused him to rebel. But the crew quickly found out I was the reason behind the uprising and took drastic measures to stop it." Ahmed sighed. He explained they threw his container overboard, removing and destroying his home in the process. But before they could, he was able to hide a message inside, hoping someone would find it. Izzy and the officers couldn't believe what they had just heard. This was far worse than they could have imagined. Now that the police knew what was going on, they took action. Backup was called once they had a complete picture, and a surprise raid was planned, and it works to perfection. Due to the surprise attack, the ship's crew was quickly arrested. With the criminals were in custody, the Coast Guard took control of the ship. Meanwhile, Izzy helped Ahmed free all the families, and not much later, the boat docked at the nearest city. There, an emergency shelter was put up to care for the victims. It didn't take long for the media to pick up the story. It became a nationwide story, and Izzy followed it closely as she returned home after the city took control of the support. She was glad to see the situation had a good outcome and incredibly happy she played a part in it.